Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we will be looking at the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine that clearly are heading nowhere. And we will hear from several high-rank officials, and I don't put Zelinsky in this category because we know who he is. However, we're gonna hear from Zelinsky, we're gonna hear from Trump, we're going to hear from Sergey Lavrov, as well as Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States, how those peace talks are expected to go, and is the only solution to end this a physical meeting between President Putin and President Trump. Also in this video, I will be sharing with you a video from someone who I came across very recently, and that is addressing, is Trump the oligarch? And the narrative that has been created around it. So stay tuned all the way to the end of the video. If you want to hear my thoughts, I'm not going to express all of it in this video. However, I think you will find that one I will be sharing with you pretty interesting and valuable. So let's start with, who shall we start with? Perhaps we should start with Marco Rubio, who was answering the questions yesterday. He was already in Turkey, from the journalist about how he sees this potential negotiation between Ukraine and Russia to go and what to expect from it. So let's take a listen. This one will be very quick.
At this point, I think it's abundantly clear that the only way we're going to have a breakthrough here is between President Trump and President Putin. It's going to require that level of engagement to have a breakthrough in this matter. I don't think anything productive is actually going to happen from this point forward until they engage in a very frank and direct conversation, which I know President Trump is willing to do. The president is impatient to end this war. He's impatient, as he's been clearly said, that something needs to happen soon. Too many people are dying. There's too much destruction. And I think he's ready to have that engagement and determine once and for all if there's a path forward and what that path is. The level of team that was sent by the Russian side is certainly not indicative of one that's going to lead to a major breakthrough. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm 100% wrong.
All right, so that was coming from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States. Now let's go to President Trump. His reaction to that, still from the Air Force One plane. So let's take a listen to Trump.
I know nothing about a delegation. I haven't even checked. Look, nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying. Thank you. You're going to land right now. Thank you. I know.
All right, so Reuters has very shaky hands, cannot hold the camera straight for professional journalists, or maybe that was the plane situation. I shouldn't blame. Anyway, that was Trump responding. Now, let's go to Zelensky as he landed yesterday and what he had to say, as if it matters. But let's take a listen.
Доброго дня, вітаю. Доброго дня. Рівень русських поки що мені офіційно невідомий, але із того, що ми бачимо, більше схоже на бутафорський рівень. Ми подумаємо, що будемо робити, які будуть наші кроки після розмови з президентом Ердоганом. Я думаю, у нас буде кілька годин для важливої розмови, дуже важливих рішень. Ми повинні розуміти, що за рівень російської делегації, який у них мандат, чи спроможні вони хоч щось самі приймати. Тому що нам всім відомо, хто в Росії приймає рішення.
So now let's hear from the one and only Sergey Lavrov. Let's bring all of this to more settled energy, as Sergey Lavrov always, regardless of the subject, handles those topics in a very calm manner. Let's take a listen to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Sergey Lavrov.
Елена Кудрявцева, деловое издание «Эксперт». Здравствуйте. В эти минуты
At this
наша
moment, the
делегация,
Russian
российская
delegation is
делегация,
on its way to negotiations in Istanbul.
возможно,
They may have
уже
even
даже
already
добрались до
arrived.
Бреста. С какими тезисами,
What
с
are the main
какими
points we are
основными
bringing to these
поинтами мы
negotiations?
отправились на переговоры? Украина
Ukraine
в
has made
последние
quite a
дни
spectacle
устроила
around this
настоящее
event in
шоу
recent
вокруг этого
days.
события.
Do you see a
Видите
possibility
вероятность того,
that,
что в
in
конце
the end,
концов они
the
могут
talks
быть
could be
сорваны?
derailed?
И какими
What
результатами
outcomes would satisfy
переговоры
Moscow if the
состоятся,
negotiations do
Москва
take
будет
place?
удовлетворена. Спасибо.
I spoke about this at the very beginning. President Putin has repeatedly addressed this. I won't even repeat it. In June 2024, speaking at the Russian Foreign Ministry, he laid out our entire position. It is not about agreeing to a ceasefire, only to once again pump Ukraine full of weapons and egg it on to continue the war, but about ensuring a long-term, sustainable settlement that fairly reflects the security interests of all involved parties. To achieve this, the root causes of this conflict must be eliminated. For years, we warned against creating these root causes, referring to what the group of putschists who came to power in Kyiv after the 2014 coup did first, by creating security threats to Russia through the integration of NATO infrastructure onto Ukrainian territory. NATO actively wanted this. Second, what the putschists did was the eradication of the Russian language, Russian culture, and everything that connected Ukraine and Russia in any way. Denazification also fits into this second part of the answer. What the regime of Zelensky is doing against everything Russian is pure Nazism. And demilitarization, because, as I said, among the root causes were NATO's plans to establish a presence on Ukrainian territory. Bases were planned to be built there, and even before the coup, naval bases were planned in Crimea. The coup plotters were supposed to implement these plans in the Sea of Azov. All of this happened. The question of what military capabilities Ukraine will possess is far from trivial. There can be no talk of any foreign military presence here. As for the prospects, diplomacy is not about guessing, but about doing. This must be done professionally. And professionally means not shouting into a microphone like Zelinsky, demanding that President Putin personally come here to me, but engaging in real work.
So as always, exactly how things are. Sergey Lavrov just explained again the entire situation and how he took everyone back again to 2014, because people forget, you have to remind them when this whole thing started. Actually, some people say even much, much earlier than that. But I want to play this before we go to the next video that summarizes pretty much in a nutshell what the Ukraine delegation might represent, even though the people you will see are not all from Ukraine. So this is what we are dealing with. I wouldn't even say who, what we are dealing with, because some creatures are truly not human beings. Some of you know, some of you don't, but that's okay. Now I want to take you to the video that I came across about 2 days ago, and I really appreciate this lady addressing this and explaining it in such a way that I cannot explain, nor I have that much information. But what I have and what I follow is my intuition, and that I trust. I come to this understanding that sometimes the more you know, the more it confuses you as far as the intellectual side of things. So I tend to remove myself from all of this, go back to my intuition and listen to it as I always do, because this is my guidance in life, not someone else's opinion. I also believe in me is this feeling and this knowledge and understanding that, I repeat this again, Putin and Trump are fighting with the same evil. Some people don't see it. They might never see it. That's okay. It's their choice. It's their opinion. This is how I see it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Also, it's interesting that some people don't realize that the very same people who want the public to hate Putin so much, to despise him, to absolutely want to crucify him, are the very same people who are doing the same thing to Trump. It's the same group. Nevertheless, let me take you to the video in which this lady, and her name is, let me see, because I don't know her name. I don't remember her name. One moment. Her name is Susan Kokinda. She is saying, is Trump the oligarch? And she's explaining this whole phenomena about the oligarchy and what's really going on. So let's take a listen. It will be about 10 minutes, 12 minutes long. I will attach the link down below in the description box. Those of you who are hating Trump so much and you cannot listen, I understand. It's all good. You don't have to. But those of you who are more open-minded and just want to see someone who is presenting this side of things in a very clear way that maybe deserves a little bit of your attention. So let's go to the video.
They love to call Donald Trump an oligarch, don't they? There he was in Saudi Arabia hanging out with princes and kings and billionaires. There he is accepting a luxury jet from Qatar. The other day, I saw a billboard on the highway going into Detroit that said, "Stop the plutocrats." And of course, the demonstrators even compare him to Adolf Hitler. But if you're watching this, you know that that is crap. And Bobby Kennedy Jr. came out and said it in the most uncertain terms in the Oval Office on Monday when he praised Donald Trump's historic actions to slash prescription drug costs. He attacked Democratic mouthpieces like Elizabeth Warren or Robert Reich, who are saying that President Trump is on the side of the oligarchs. There has never been a president more willing to stand up to the oligarchs than Donald Trump. And I'm very proud of you, Mr. President, for your courage. But remarks from RFK Jr. are not going to stop the narrative. And the narrative is that Trump and his wealthy supporters are the problem. But the real oligarchs, the ones truly pulling the strings and profiting from the existing financial system and from global chaos, are the very people who are pointing the finger. At Promethean Action, we've been tracking their networks, their funding, and their tactics for decades. I'm Susan Kokinda, and this midweek update is going to expose who these real oligarchs are and how their primary means of control is shaping the way you think, how President Trump is challenging their system with strategic and economic policies that are unprecedented in our lifetimes, and most critically, what you need to understand to help win the battle for America in 2026. So, who are the real oligarchs? It's not just rich people. The term oligarchy comes from ancient Greece, and it means rule of the few. And throughout history, those few have ruled through war, money, and ideological control. Those few are the global financier elite, which since around the time of the American Revolution could be found in the institutions of the Anglo-Dutch imperial system. Today, they are deeply intertwined with British intelligence and its subsets in the United States. George Soros is the poster child. His propaganda training and financial power comes from Britain. But it goes much deeper. The oligarchy operates through a complex web of private equity funds, tax-exempt foundations, 501c3s, 501c4s, all meticulously designed to profile, manipulate, and control public opinion in America and worldwide. And what they do is they obscure the real battle lines. They propagate ideologies that divide us. On the left, it's the hyper-individualistic of, I can be any sex or species I want, which is obviously detached from reality. And on the right, it takes the Adam Smith-inspired form of, I'll make a profit any way I want, even if it means gutting our industries and shipping jobs overseas. Both extremes are weaponized to sabotage President Trump's American system resurgence and the idea of a unified, productive nation. And it's not just the Democrats. Trump has to fight a libertarian-infected faction in the Republican Party, including those who fought him on raising the debt ceiling, which did have to be done in the short term so we can begin to grow our way out of the crisis.
This AI tool will take your idea and create a complete book, complete with design, images.
Or the Heritage Foundation influenced congressmen who are always pushing cuts to programs like Medicaid that right now millions of working class MAGA families actually rely on. As Republican Senator Josh Hawley himself warned in a New York Times op-ed, these are the kinds of conservative actions that could lose the 2026 election for Trump. These different factions are prime examples of how underlying British system contaminated ideologies serve the real oligarchs. The real oligarchs include big pharma, big tech, the military-industrial complex, big ag, the central banks, with their deep state connections, their control over media narratives, and their vast financial resources. So how can President Trump actually take them on? Well, he has two things going for him. He has, as RFK Jr. said, quote, the intestinal fortitude, the stiff spine, and the courage to stand up for the American people. But he also has a grand strategy, which isn't always obvious if you're trapped in the day-to-day news cycle. He's strategically hitting them where it hurts. And that's where you come in and where you have to think more and more like Donald Trump. He knows where he's going. He thinks like a general. He has a core team executing his policies. And he needs you to stop reacting to every blip on social media and to get off of the enemy's territory and force them onto ours. That's how we at Promethean Action have been fighting for decades. And that's why you should join our fight by subscribing, or better yet, becoming a supporting member. President Trump is directly challenging the globalist system itself. How? By fostering real physical production here in the United States, promoting economic nationalism, and forging direct relations with other countries, bypassing or dismantling institutions and policies which serve the global oligarchs. So consider President Trump's groundbreaking trip to the Mideast, which is ongoing as we broadcast. The mainstream media immediately paints a picture of hobnobbing with oligarchs. But what really happened? As Trump himself highlighted, he was celebrating the 80-year partnership with Saudi Arabia that began when President Franklin Roosevelt met with King Abdulaziz aboard the U.S. Quincy in 1945 without the British. That meeting infuriated Winston Churchill and the British Empire, which was determined to keep the region as a perpetual cockpit for war under their thumb, and which unfortunately until now they have pretty much succeeded in doing. In his speech in Saudi Arabia, President Trump directly took on the consequences of that British strategy. You've seen it in the form of the neocon regime change policies of recent decades, policies pushed by both Democratic and Republican presidents, and Congress. Trump lauded the new generation of leaders who are transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past. And he made the point that this great transition away from chaos and war has, quote, come not from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving lectures on how to live and how to govern your affairs. He received a spontaneous standing ovation for announcing that the U.S. is ending the devastating sanctions against Syria, a direct blow to the Western interventionist policies that have destroyed that nation. These last several days have seen other extraordinary actions in kicking over the oligarchs' geopolitical chessboard, with President Trump's personal interventions into resolving the Russia-Ukraine, India-Pakistan, and Iran conflicts, not to mention his growing rift with the perpetual war hawk Bibi Netanyahu. Those are all works in progress, but the oligarchs are scrambling to somehow keep their footing in a world where sovereign nations are once again the principal players. And look at the economic side of this trip. Trump announced historic deals, including two $5 billion investment funds covering energy and aerospace and defense. This is keeping with other actions he's taken in creating new channels to fund capital directly into American industries. This is a clear end run around the Federal Reserve and Wall Street's chokehold on our domestic economy. While Trump verbally spars with the Fed's Jerome Powell, he's quietly setting up alternate capabilities to finance domestic production, not to mention the sotto voce discussions of a new Bretton Woods, which would replace the post-1971 globalist-run financial system.
Biolog i laureat Nagrody Nobla Nicholas Tinbergen dokonał odkrycia, które wyjaśnia, dlaczego coraz trudniej.
So this battle is monumental, and the stakes couldn't be higher as we look toward the crucial 2026 midterm elections, which are absolutely life and death for the continuation of Donald Trump's presidency. The enemy will stop at nothing in their attempt to crush this movement. If they regain full control of Congress, they will undoubtedly try to impeach him or even jail him and anybody else who stands with him. Now, you might look at the current disarray in the Democratic Party and say, we have it in the bag. Their national approval rating is in the low 20s. They're plagued by vicious infighting. The new woke Democratic National Committee vice chair has set up a PAC to primary other Democrats, and there are now moves to oust him. In Michigan, squad member Rashida Tlaib is backing a primary opponent to the incumbent Detroit Democrat. Nominal leaders like Gavin Newsom seem to be having an identity crisis, suddenly warning that Bay Area progressivism isn't the future for the party. And the popular mayor of Detroit is running for governor as an independent because he knows the Democratic Party brand is toxic. Seeing all this, it might be dangerously easy to become complacent. Frankly, it looks like we're beating up on an invalid. But that's a dangerous illusion. The real problem, the real threat to victory in 2026 has little to do with the visible chaos in the Democrat Party, because the real battle lines are not Democrat versus Republican. It's the sophisticated, often hidden, full-spectrum information warfare that's run by British intelligence on behalf of maintaining their system. And that will crescendo against voters as we get closer to 2026. So how do we as the American people effectively fight back? It's by recognizing that the real fight is between Trump's economic nationalism and the entrenched financier elite. It begins by understanding their ultimate ideological weakness and by recognizing and reclaiming our true American identity. As I said earlier,
So I played most of this video. I will attach the link down below in the description box. Before I take you to the moment that this lady has mentioned about Trump's speech in Saudi Arabia, the exact moment actually, I want to say one more time my personal take on this, and I'm not here to prove anything to anyone, is that both Putin and Trump fight with the same evil. Now let me take you to the video with Trump from Saudi Arabia.
And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly.
And I think I will play one more video. As far as Netanyahu goes, this is from archives, also with Trump.
Who let us down. That was a very terrible thing. I will say that. You know, I did have a bad experience with Israel, though. When we took out Soleimani, it was us and Israel working as a group. And we knew where he was. We knew how he was coming in. We knew the plane. We knew everything. Israel was going to do this with us, and it was being planned and working on it for months. And now we had everything all set to go. And the night before it happened, I got a call that Israel will not be participating in this attack. I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing. I will say that. Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing. I will say that.
So all I have to say before I end this video, thank you so much for watching, by the way, is this. Now more than ever, you have to use your own discernment. You have to listen to your own gut and your own intuition. And you have to remember that there is an opposition. There is also controlled opposition, and the old ancient rule, divide and conquer, still exists. And it comes in different forms, different ways, and you might be very easy influenced to think a certain way because you hear it or someone who you admire tells you that, and you believe that person completely, and you don't listen to your own gut. So if your gut tells you that he is evil, Putin is good, or Putin is evil, Trump is good, or both are evil, it might take some time to disconnect from all the information, maybe be in silence in nature, take time for yourself. And maybe the answer will come from the divine. That's all I have for you, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. All the links will be down below in the description box. If this brings you any value, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you choose to support my work, the best way is by joining my Patreon, locals, or becoming the member of the channel. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's AniaK_44. And with this being said, lots of love. And remember, we are the leading edge and we are saving humanity. And I see you in another video. Bye, guys.